Bob Harms. Well, Bob's originally from the district, and we grew up together. And guys,
He is a lawyer and a loser.
no. No offense, but I've said it before, and it's true, and those who know me know it's true. I wouldn't vote for my own mother if she was wrong on her policies. I might love my mother, I might appreciate everything that she does for me or has done for me, will do for me, but if she's wrong on the policies, I ain't voting for her. We've got to stop with the North Dakota nice if we truly want change. Don Longmire, and some of you may be aware of this because there was a mailer that you might have got recently about it in the mail, with Don Longmire joining with Democrats in voting against a bill that would have banned the transitioning, the gender mutilation of minors in North Dakota. He voted against that with Democrats. To me, that is unacceptable. It's inexcusable. It ended up passing without his vote. But the fact that he would think that's okay to let minors be subjected to life-transforming, altering surgeries before they're even old enough to have a cigarette or drink a beer is insane. And with all due respect to a man who I like on a personal level, he has no business being in Bismarck. This election, for those of you that are here, need to understand that this is what it's about. Do you truly want change in North Dakota, or do you want the status quo? Bob Harms has been a Bismarck lawyer and lobbyist for decades now. He literally changed his residency to District 2 on February 16th just so he could run for the Senate. I don't care what his background is or whether he grew up here or all of that. That's a fact of what he did, and his background is a lawyer and a lobbyist, amongst that, a green energy lobbyist, by the way. And I'll add to that. I'm going to pick on Bob. You just can't stop me. This is my time. I'm not restricted by the same things you are. I was part of that movement in 2012 to abolish property taxes. I've not been at the front of the one that's going on now. I've been too busy volunteering my time to try to get these two elected to do anything with property tax. But in 2012, Bob led the effort against the property tax measure. Now, I don't care where you fell on that in 2012. I wouldn't hold it against you if you voted against it. But Bob, basically, he did say then that, well, if it doesn't pass now and we can't fix it down the road, I'll be on your side when you want to eliminate it again. He ain't on the side of elimination now. With all due respect to Bob, who I'm cordial with on a personal level, he speaks out of both sides of his mouth, just like lawyers typically do. So my message to you can be summed up this way. Please, not only go to the polls on Tuesday, June 11th, and vote for these two and Charlie, but please, 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 I beg of you, tell your friends. If you have Facebook, go to their Facebook pages. You have a Facebook page. So go to their Facebook pages and share from their Facebook pages over the course of the next 2 days. There's about 30 of us in this room. If you did that for the next 2 to 3 days, there's hundreds and potentially thousands of people in District 2 who will see those shares and be exposed to these candidates. If you have friends in your contact list on your phone that you can call or send a message to, call and remind them it's time to vote. This is urgent. This is important. Your decision to act or not act could very well be the difference between whether these guys are elected or whether they're not. I can tell you after 8 years of experience of doing this state politics thing, if you believe in Republican Party, limited government, these are your candidates. It is not represented by the others who didn't even bother trying to get the endorsement from the local Republican Party. In fact, Bert and Don stayed home and hid in their bunkers and didn't even have the decency to show up. When people started asking them questions over the course of the last couple of years, wanting answers to why some of the things were going on the way that they were in Bismarck, they went into hiding. So now what they're banking on is incumbency and hoping that people outside of this room will just elect them because they've been there before. Don't do it. If you want change, these are your candidates. Please vote for Mark, Alexa, and Charlie. and Susan.
I'm just gonna say, just, it's funny that this day, well, we got that mailer about John. This last month, Doug, between lambing and field work and camping. But anyway, I asked Bert about this, this letter that came out about Bert, he stuck up for done every which way that he could. Oh, no, that's not how it works. This bill was, he just excuse after excuse after excuse justifying Don was good. Well, he's not. It's like I said, I asked Bert just to give him a chance, and I don't see eye to eye with Bert on most things. And I don't think I did on this statement that he made either, it's just, but they're thick like whatever, they'll vouch for each other, right or wrong. I just wanted to say that, thanks. All right.
That's a question for Justin. Did Bert in your surgery bill that Don voted against?
Bert voted for it, so isn't it interesting he would defend Don voting against
Me and Sharon were talking about it earlier. I was defending them, they voted different.
That's because, to be quite honest with you, to give Don some credit, he probably has some conviction at least of why he voted against it. Bert has no conviction, puts his finger to the wind, knows if he votes it against it, he's gonna have to pay for it when he gets home and people find out about it. So he voted for it. Yeah, for him to sit there and defend Don's vote against it when he voted for it, just tells you all you need to know. Answer period overall.
Gerald, you want to say anything? Good.
I got a question. What are we gonna do about carbon sequestration and solid wetland? What do we know that?
He's looking at you, Mark.
I'm definitely sitting in the wrong place. Okay, this is a hot topic. So does everybody understand the carbon sequestration dilemma in here? Does anybody need an explanation? Okay, so everybody understands what it's all about. So we're piping CO2 from Nebraska all the way up to North Dakota. North Dakota is the dumping ground for the CO2 because they've selected some of the old coal mine sites north of Bismarck to receive this CO2. It's a high pressure pipeline, 2,500 PSI. And obviously it has to run through a bunch of land all the way from Nebraska up here to North Dakota to get here. This is a federal mandate that's coming, and there's all kinds of federal tax incentives that go along with it. About 45Q, and North Dakota will receive all kinds of federal money for taking every ton of CO2 that we pump into our formation. So we are now at the state of for-profit venture. In other words, the state is excited about receiving all this money for being a dumping ground, but there is no end product. Now, a case could potentially be made if you're bringing CO2 into Western North Dakota, or you use it for tertiary or secondary recovery of oil, because you can pump liquid CO2 into the formation, and it'll sweep the formation and enhance your recovery. But because the federal government is all about green, that's the last thing they want to do. So they bring it over to the central part of the state, where there's no oil, and they just pump it away. So where we have a product that could be used for good benefit to North Dakota and bring us additional revenues in oil, they're deciding just to pump it away and take some tax credit from the federal government, which in my mind makes no sense whatsoever. So ultimately, when you're running a pipeline from Nebraska to North Dakota, you have to pass through a lot of land. There's a lot of farmers that say, no way, no thanks. I don't want anything to do with this pipeline. I don't want it on my land. I don't want it coming close to that because there are dangers. Carbon dioxide is heavier than air, and when it settles, if you come in with a cloud of carbon dioxide, you drop and you die because you can't breathe. There's no air. It's just carbon dioxide. So it can be very dangerous, and farmers don't want the liability of having this on their land. And it's a fair thing for them not to want this. So the government is coming back, and they're calling eminent domain. Now, eminent domain was put in place in order to satisfy the need for electrical and sewer and water when you're going through cities. But it was never meant so governments could generate revenue from it. So what it's ended up being is this for-profit venture, and they're throwing eminent domain on landowners and saying you must accept this pipeline going through. And the landowners say this is my property, it's my right to decide what happens with it. And so the state, actually Summit Pipelines, who's a company, are suing the landowners to demand that they give them passage. And of course, the landowners don't have the money to fight these big corporations, and the state is in cahoots with the company. So the whole thing's a huge mess. It's ending up in a lot of lawsuits. Don't know where it's going, but morally and ethically, it's completely wrong because it's just wiping the farmer or the landowner out of the equation and saying, we will do this because it's good for all of North Dakota. In their mind, in the state's eyes, right? So what are we going to do about this? Okay, that's a question. Sorry for the long prelude to that. But I mean, ultimately, all of us have to stand up for the farmers. And all of us have to say, this is wrong. As legislators, we can do that as well. It's in the courts right now. Where it ends up and how it ends up, who knows? But I mean, it's affecting a lot of people in a very negative way. It's getting a lot of publicity. And there's a lot of people, local people on the radio who are against it as well as in non-governmental organizations that are fighting it. So I think ultimately it will be shut down, but that's.
Can I just say how crazy it is that the same people who are fighting for that, some of them, at least two actually, that won't do anything or doing very little for our American portal because she wants to be able to heat their homes with gas.
Yeah.
I find that kind of crazy, to be quite honest.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
I have one question too. Where does that funding go? Legacy, or do you know where it's gonna go if they get it?
It'll go into the general fund, more than likely. It'll just end up as general revenues into the general fund and used for general expenses. You know, there's three different funds. There's the general fund, there's a special fund, and then what's the other one? I'm missing one, but legacy fund. And so I personally am not a big fan of the legacy fund because what that legacy fund is a future means of spending for the government. They put $10 billion aside. They say, hey, look here, we got $10 billion. They sold it to us as a great deal, and in many respects, it is a good deal. But do they ever think at all that, hey, we got $10 million, we got excess revenues coming in? Maybe we should lower the taxes of people in North Dakota. And that never happens. And so that disturbs me. I mean, everybody likes having $10 billion in the bank, but they're forcing us to save our money in their coffers so they can spend it in the future. And whenever government has more money to spend, they find ways to spend it. So our government goes bigger and bigger and bigger, and we're all being victimized by the government because they're taking this money as theirs. That money that's in their pocket is yours. They come and hear it, they take over it, they say it was yours, now it's ours.
We always heard when the bucket got full, it was gonna overflow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every meeting I go to, it's, that bucket, yeah, it's gonna. That's like a bigger bucket.
So the next question we have to ask is how big is big enough for the legacy fund? Because you see, there is no cap on it. There is no end game. There's no long-term plan. It's let's make it bigger. Because when it's bigger, we're going to have more money to spend.
Did you know with the legacy fund in 2019, there was a bill proposed that passed the House, but it got defeated in the Senate that would, because right now the earnings from the legacy fund go to the general fund, so they can just spend it. And what it would have done is it would have required, I think it was a 2/3 vote of the legislature in order to access the earnings. And if you would have just left the legacy fund as it was, the projection was that it would reach 34 billion by after 40 years. If this resolution would have passed and went on to the voters of North Dakota, and North Dakotans would have approved of it, and it would have made it more difficult for the legislature to get in there and spend their earnings, then you would have, the projections were that you would have had $143 billion in the legacy fund after 40 years, which comes to about $15.5 billion per biennium. They could have been funding the entirety of state government without any taxes from us from the legacy fund, and a Republican Senate voted it down.
And interestingly enough, they're lying to us in many ways. They say the legacy fund is for future spending when our revenues are down or gone. But the fact of the matter is, all the interest, all the income, the revenue that comes off that $10 million goes straight into the general fund, just as John was saying. And they spend it, you know, so what they should be doing is accumulating all that money, all into grow, if we're really truly saving it for when the oil revenues are down. So it's, again, it's a bit of a ruse. And again, my opponent is very proud of the fact that he created it, but what he created was a monster that takes your money, doesn't give it back to you, like it should be doing, because it is your money now. And he's keeping it, saying this is a good deal for North Dakota. Well, maybe.
Forgive me for yapping too, but after our District 2 convention, I went up to Bob Harms and I said, what's your feelings about how the legacy fund is being managed? Well, I think they're doing a pretty good job. Then at the forum that Alexa was at with them, he was griping about the fact that they've spent 1.8 of the $1.9 billion in earnings. And I'm thinking, there's the both sides of the mouth again. On the one hand, oh, we're just fine. But out in front of a different crowd, oh, now we've got a problem. It's just like,
That's what you want to hear.
Yeah.
You know? And the other thing, I'll say this, you know, the money that is being spun out is being invested back into our enemies' pockets. Big part of that money has been going to China, invest in Chinese companies, and they're building their military off the profit. The money we invest with them to ultimately come and battle either Taiwan or ourselves. You know, so we're,
Thank you,
it's,
Doug.
pardon me?
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, thank you, Doug Roberto.
I got something to add about that question.
Yeah.
I've worked with carbon dioxide online. In that pipeline, at that pressure, it's liquefied.
Right.
It's liquefied long before it's.
Yeah.
An opening in that damn pipe opens up a real.
oh yeah.
No, I can decompress it, right? And it's high pressure. That's the
How
other thing.
big is the line?
It's pretty big.
Is it more than a foot?
More than a foot. I think so too.
That is now normally 3 kilowatt people of a pro boost. Pretty solid.
Yeah, it can blow up, but the other thing, as we were saying, it'll also, if it blows up in a populated area, it's gonna suffocate everybody because it sinks back to earth, removes oxygen supply.
This pipeline, they're actually looking at doing a, here, and uranium plant, oh yeah, 4 pound on down. And that's gonna have a pipeline run back to fuel. There's also a fuel station, they're all building over by Frank. That's gonna have the same dumping ground, the same, going back to fuel. There's a lot of pipelines running there, the same. It's all tied back, it's all tied back, 45 feet back.
And it's collusion between government and corporation.
Yeah.
once again.
Absolutely.
They're all deeper. But
How deep is it?
I heard 4 foot. 3 foot. So somebody,
Supposed to be 4 foot deep to the bottom of the hole. So that means the put out the pipeline can be 2 foot.
then how are you gonna turn that dirt?
But you're not gonna, you're
They're gonna pump that whole line underground in this state.
Well, they're going from Nebraska to this state. We're the destination.
In other words, they're gonna dispose of it here.
Yeah. No, we're big garbage.
Underground?
Yep.
5 miles down?
No, coal mines. I don't know, I think it's 10,000 feet. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's right, 10,000.
It's shallower than it's in the 8,000 foot
Is
area.
it 8,000?
It's in the Dakota Stand group of, underwater ocean formation.
Oh, okay.
South Dakota just replaced or just voted out 14 incumbents
Yeah,
last week over this issue of carbon sequestration.
people are waking up. That's a good thing. People are getting involved and understand what's happening.
10 years, all that land is, wherever that sequestered at, all that land becomes state land. People will not own that land after 10, 12 years. It's in the state constitution, it was dug up early county here a month ago. Followed that up, but in the fine line and the fine print, at the end game of all this, the state will wind up with all the people.
Well, the 10 million ain't enough.
No,
You take your damn pipeline somewhere else.
No, it's a dump. That's what's happening. Sorry, sir, you had a question
Well,
or a comment?
I have a real problem. I don't know why it was created or why I would need it. But I don't know of any farmers that have converted their tracks to online. For an ethanol. Because it's an inferior fuel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that way back when they thought we were running out of oil. So we needed to have some, but you know, you're burning oil, burning diesel to create an inferior.
Well, you said it, it's subsidy. Anytime you got a subsidy, you got a certain amount of people who make much money.
Government involved. They're spending money, spending aware of creating it. Yes, the tax that everybody heard is inflation. But inflation doesn't hurt bad enough to jump up and say, "Let's stop." But everybody gets hurt by inflation.
Oh, yeah.
Some people are hurt by taxes. If you're not making enough money to pay taxes, it's hurting you worse than it is to pay for it. But we don't have something straight about it. The stupidest thing in the world to have enough to create an inferior fuel to replace the fuel that and all that carbon dioxide that the ethanol plants produce is totally unnecessary.
Good.
Pipeline shouldn't be there, the CO2 should be there.
You're up.
I'm gonna add Jeff to the list, I think we can get rid of it.
So one thing to think about in this whole deal too is the coal mines aren't innocent in this, as much as they want to play it off to. I grew up in that area, in the Hazen-Beulah area, and I can tell you that I've had relatives, I've had friends that have worked for the mines. This hasn't just been in the last few years. This has been a long time in the making. Some of my relatives, we talk about this all the time. They say, Shiloh, this has been coming for a long time because the coal mines can make more money burying this stuff than they can actually mine. So that's something to think about as well. One question I would have for you guys as candidates is how are you guys going to approach lobbyists when they approach you guys? Because that has been a big thing. This last session, we sent some new representatives down there, and one from District 33, which is the Beulah area. He voted against a bill that had to do with property rights when it came to this pipeline. So I guess my question would be is how do you guys intend to deal with the lobbyists down there? Because it's something to be concerned about. Sure.
I'm gonna ask them where they live. If they're not in my district, I don't want to listen. You know, because they're not the voice that I'm gonna listen. You know, you people are the ones that, you know, we get paid. I mean, we are paid by the people. Legit, above the. They're not my district.
To hear.
Well, it's simple for me, so I can. It's simple for me. So I'm not doing this for the money. I don't care less. I'm doing it to do the right thing. So like I said, I'm called into this position. I have a very strong moral foundation, and I want to do the right thing for North Dakota. So listening to lobbyists, yes, I'll listen. But they'll only influence me if it's doing good for the state of North Dakota and all of you. So I mean, it's very simple. It's 4 months a year. I give my all for all of you guys, and then it's back to normal life. So I mean, lobbyists are part of life down there, but I don't see them being a problem for me at all. Sometimes you need the lobbyists because they have a lot of information. They can fill you in on the details, but it doesn't mean they have to sway your opinion.
A lot of bullshit too.
Pardon me?
A lot of bullshit too.
Oh, it does.
I'm gonna answer that real quick.
Well, I just wanted to say that, you know, there's an old saying that says your mind, if you only listen as long as your ass will let it. And I'm sure you guys will be available for questions afterwards, right? If you guys have any questions. But yeah, we should wrap this up. We're gonna have a Sun Delivery meeting immediately following this, correct? And you're more than welcome to stick around for it. If you want to see what these guys are up to. I know the members of this group have been doing a lot of work, putting on a lot of miles. I know a lot of them personally. They're doing what they believe is right. And I think their heart is in the right place. And I think they are in the right place. Like we said before, Joe Gorick is our district chairman. And like I said before, I'll sum it up by saying, you know, if you're going to follow, there's nothing wrong with that, but get behind the right person. These are good people.
And just super quick, I want to answer that question for Shiloh about lobbyists. One of the interesting things about my job is I actually do work around lobbyists, you know, online there and other places for pro Second Amendment rights issues. So I'm really familiar with how they operate and really familiar with what to do when we need to ignore them. Because the only people, like Mark said, who we are accountable to is our district. And that's very important not to be owned, not to have special interest money, not to have anybody in your ear, in your pocket, other than our own people and our own voters. So super important.
Thank you.
Guys, get a good ride.
There you go. Remember, June 11th, folks, make sure you go out and vote. Make sure you get out, meet your candidates, ask them the questions you need to ask.
Lobbyists.
So with that, we will see you next time. Here's the deal.